unethical behaviors. Obviously, there's a lot of things you can do unethically as a teacher, but the three biggest topics I wanted to make sure we covered was sexual behavior with students, social networking, and cheating on standardized tests. Again, there's a lot of things you can do wrong as a teacher, but these are the three big hot topics that this course wanted us to cover. So diving right into it. So sexual misconduct, according to RAIN, which is the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, consent cannot be given by underage individual intoxicated or incapacitated by drugs or alcohol or asleep or unconscious. Again, that's why it's illegal. There really shouldn't be any questions of what sexual misconduct is with students. We shouldn't even be thinking about it as teachers, but they do happen. I did want to have the definition just so there isn't any confusion. So what contributes to sexual misconduct? I pulled a few statistics from Innocent Lives Foundation. They're a foundation that's founded to try to prevent sexual misconduct by teachers. And I'll consider the source. I know they get funding, through this process, so their numbers might be a little inflated with their statistics, but I will use some of the things that they present. So how often does it happen? In a report from 2004, and multiple studies have shown similar results, it says that roughly 10% of students experience sexual misconduct by a teacher during their K through 12 educational experience. Now, again, I will consider the foundation's purpose, and they get funding, with these numbers, but I'd like to see what their definition of sexual misconduct is. That does seem a little high to me. I know we don't have the problem in this building right now that I know of, but I know we've had the problem before in years past before I've been here. So Innocent Lives Foundation, they believe that the surge of this in the last 15 years is because of what we see on television, what we see in social media. We're just synthesized to way more things that we really shouldn't be viewing as a society, but it still happens. And that makes sense. We just have access to way more things than we had just 20 years ago. So typical predators are usually someone that's popular in the building, can be a football coach, can be a club sponsor, it could be somebody that's really popular with the kids, but it's usually someone that is going to have a lot of confidence in themselves, so they tend to gravitate to someone that's going to be the center of attention. Typical victims are usually someone that have low self-esteem, are picked on by their peers, seem to have a lot more need for attention, got poor home lives. So it makes sense for something like this to happen for someone that, an adolescent that's more vulnerable, that doesn't have a lot of friends and really doesn't have parents to turn to. And that's from a report from the Department of Ed in 2004. It's a piece called Educators' Sexual Misconduct, a synthesis of existing literature. In this report too, they do talk about, it doesn't have to just be males. It can be females too, and there have been cases with that. So with statistics, I found it interesting from Jenny Tiplett. She works for, or she writes for Safe Learn. On her site, she came up with a few statistics with this. The 4 most popular states in the country that have the most cases are Texas, North Carolina, Alabama, and Louisiana. So I found that interesting that you have 4 states that are in the Bible Belt, so to speak, and you have the 4 most cases of sexual misconduct by teachers. Texas obviously has the most cases. It makes sense because they're the most popular state of those 4. Alabama cases have tripled since 2004. Louisiana had the most female predators. 41% of their cases involve a female teacher. So I thought that was interesting, that you do have 4, historically conservative states in the Bible Belt, and yet we have sexual misconduct more popular in these states than any other state in the union. Do we have any questions about anything so far? Okay. All right. And then kind of going into my next topic, with social media and everything, but I'll show you guys this first. This is straight from Innocent Lives Foundation. Shows, how do sexual predators target, strategies that they use, and how they maintain this relationship with students. I'm not gonna read all of these, but as I said, it's usually someone that's got, peer issues, terrible home life, wants somebody to be, a parental figure, and usually they keep up with this relationship by providing gifts, making them feel guilty for what happened prior. So this is why this lasts a long time. It's not just a one-time deal. This is usually, a month relationship, years of, being secretive with the relationship. So going into social networking, I said before that that's one of the causes of the surge for sexual misconduct. The state of Missouri passed a state bill in 2011 that it is actually illegal to contact a student outside of school, off a school approved device or app. It makes sense. I'm surprised there's only just been Missouri that has something like that. So it's going to be school apps like Remind, Schoology, Power School, some of the other things that I've seen in my career, to just prevent teachers from falling in that pitfall. But continue on with social networking. I use 5 court cases to talk about how social networking is a litmus test of if it's illegal or not. First one I wanted to talk about was Pickering and Board of Education, 1968. You're probably thinking, Jake, why is this 1968 case used in social networking? That's before social networking. That's absolutely true, but this is the precedent for future cases. Long story short, Marvin Pickering was a teacher of the school, wrote a local newspaper, criticizing the board and the superintendent of allocations of funds. Superintendent fired him, but Pickerton won his appeal because the court viewed that he was also a concerned citizen, even though he was not even though he is a teacher. So as long as you are a concerning citizen and you talk about things, you make it public for the betterment of the public, you're going to be okay as far as social networking. On the flip side, Connick and Myers, Sheila Myers was in a district attorney office. I can't remember what state it was, but she was transferred by Connick within his office. She declined the transfer, decided to send a questionnaire to all the employees about Connick. She was ultimately fired, and the court upheld that decision because Myers acted in a personal grievance way. So it's Pickerton and Connick is a 2-pronged test now with social networking, and is still used today. So you have to be a concerned citizen for the public, and you can't have a personal grievance against the school or any individual. It was used famously with the most famous with the 3 cases that I've provided. Sperriman versus Hughes. Sperriman made a Facebook page in 2005 and was contacting students through that messenger. And he was fired, obviously, for sending, personal messages, sexual innuendo with students. So it was not, the betterment of the public, and it wasn't a personal grievance, but you could view it that way because it's a personal attack, really, of someone's privacy. Monroe versus Central Bucks School District. Monroe was going home and posting things about her students on blogs in a negative light, And Monroe tried to appeal that because she was saying she was not on work hours, but the fact that she was talking negatively about students got her in trouble, so she was ultimately fired as well. The one that had the most controversy, and actually the defendant actually won, Miss Land was on a bachelor trip, and someone took a picture of her in a negative light, in a negative action, and she was ultimately fired because it went out to the public. She was in court for 2 years. She did not know about these pictures and had tried to have them removed, and she ultimately got reinstated. But she was fired for these pictures because the school board thought that the students are gonna, and families are gonna view her in a more negative light, but she didn't have any knowledge of these pictures, so she wasn't fired. So Amelia Harper for K-12 Dive, and others that I've used, they recommend we should be contacting kids, outside school. Shouldn't be using school, anything that's not approved by the school, or personal emails, this and the other. I don't see why anybody would want to contact students on a personal time outside of school device, but it does happen. So that's their recommendations for that. And then the last thing I wanted to cover is cheating on standardized tests. Cheating on standardized tests have been more of an issue since No Child Left Behind. It makes sense that they have incentives, for high performance on tests, and just like anything else in any profession, people are going to do what they need to do for a little change in the pocket. The most famous case that I want to talk about that really has affected us is the Atlanta public school system in 2013. 34 teachers, support staff, and administrators were fired for changing standardized tests. It is the first time that RICO Act has been put in place for an educational issue. In RICO cases, we usually use this with racketeering with the mob, but the court deemed that superintendent at the time, Beverly Hall, was running a racketeering corrupt organization to assess teachers with their test scores. So therefore, they were running a corrupt organization, and that just so happened to be the Atlanta Public Schools. 34, like I said, 34 were charged. 11 of them went to trial, and it ended up being a grand total of $1,500 garnered from these bonuses. So you got 34 people, getting fired, and it's, just a few $100s per person that's getting money from this. So totally not worth it, money, and ultimately hurting the kids. So long-term effects of this, I did want to cover. Sarah Sparks writes for a blog in New York. Long-term effects of this, we misplace kids, inflate grades. We have, achievement tests that don't show the actual accuracy of the capability of the child. They may miss out on remediation. They may be misplaced and given too much of a rigorous course moving forward. We see that, all the time here, just with, other things. I don't think we're cheating on standardized tests, but we do know that the kids we're talking about here in our classrooms that are misplaced because of other deals. She did write that in New York, the students in their scandal in 2005 that had their test scores changed, 11% of them were less likely to receive a high school diploma during this time. So do you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, anything that enlightened you or thought was interesting?
I mean, everything was interesting, just, it kind of paints a light on, that these things happen.
Sure.
The big picture of everything, so.
Yeah, and that's what I said in my paper. Like, nobody ever dreams about getting in a situation like this when they're hired and getting in the field. And even though us three, we have a great relationship, and I know you guys work at it, I don't think we'll ever get in a situation like this, but situations like this do happen. And obviously are a huge issue, otherwise we wouldn't be talking about it.
I didn't know the social issue things were based on those 3 court cases, especially the Pickering case.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting, because you have something that, you know, we have a case is used as a precedent, you know, something that was prior to social
Yeah.
media. So I thought that was interesting. So, all right, so here's my sources. And that's it, y'all.
All right, great job.